Hi there, it's Mike O'Connor. I have been part of NuVoodoo's marketing team for nearly a decade and a half, helping our client radio stations execute marketing programs across traditional and emerging marketing channels. And my work at NuVoodoo is predated by a career as a radio executive running marketing campaigns for single market radio stations, chains of formatically related radio stations, or even whole groups. So I know a thing or two about playing the ratings game, and I can tell you that in 2024, there's two things that are absolutely clear. We are to the point where we're fishing for spare change under couch cushions in terms of the budgets that are available for marketing. That's the bad news. The good news is that between the platforms that are available to us and the advanced data and research that we're able to bring to the table, we're now talking about high leverage situations where we apply micro-targeting and we execute micro-tactics. And those two things, when applied to the right group of people, can make a big difference and hopefully deliver mega ratings. Now, if you're going to find needles in the haystack, you have a few choices, right? Burn the hay or shrink the haystack. And that's what we do with a combination of data overlays and data modeling, where we're able to be very precise, down to the exact age, where we're able to really, within a matter of geo coordinates, identify those who are more likely to participate in the ratings and those who aren't. Household data is another big tool. Just as one example, did you know that most of the people participating in the ratings come from large households of 4, 5, and 6 folks, generally moms and dads or single parents with lots of kids? That's who participates in the ratings. And we know a lot about their interests, what music they're into, what subjects they care about, how much they spend and on what. And all of those things can be modeled to find subsets of the wider audience. Most importantly, and probably of these 5 steps I've taken you through quickly, is NuVoodoo's proprietary study data. We've been at this for nearly a decade and a half, every 6 months, interviewing thousands of radio listeners, a healthy percentage of which have either accepted a meter or diary, or they, when we take them through a series of opt-in questions, they accept the premise that for a little bit of money every month, they and other members of their household would participate in this measurement system of their radio listening. So the reality is that 8 and 10, you can take off the table immediately in your marketing universe, even if you have it down to a series of hot zip codes and a narrow target demo. 8 and 10 at least won't matter. And of the remaining, nearly 2/3 of the remaining who would participate in a Nielsen, we call them RPS yes, or non-heavies in this case, they don't matter because they don't listen to enough radio. Certainly they'll accept a meter, but what they record is just not going to make a difference in your ratings. So it comes down to 7, maybe 8%, depending upon the season of our study, but it's been rock solid consistent that 7 or 8 in 100 matter to your ratings. And keep in mind, when we're doing research, we're dealing with an already survey-friendly crowd. The number out there in the real world is probably a lot lower. In other words, this is a very special group. But if you have insights into what makes them tick and then can apply those insights into your targeting, well, that's where we can turn spare change under couch cushions into mega ratings. So it starts with knowing what media they consume. You might notice that when we stack rank all of the different ad platforms and we ask the question about how often they pay attention to different advertising, but the numbers aren't that big. When you look at our total sample, it's at best, 4 and 10, and at worst, maybe a little bit better than 15%. So it's not a big group that will vote 5 or 6 on a 6-point scale in terms of how often they pay attention to commercials or commercial messaging on each of these 21 ad platforms. However, did you notice that when we impart the filter and limit things to only that roughly 1 in 5, now 1 in 6 RPS yes respondents, do you see how that engagement in advertising goes up? And then when you superimpose that time spent listening threshold, it goes up again to nearly 7 or 8 in 10 of RPS heavies, the ones listening to radio for an hour a day or more, who will return a diary or keep a meter Well, those numbers go up to nearly ubiquitous. And so that's important information. So how can we distill the marketplace down to just those folks? Well, that of course depends on the platform and the tactics that we're using, and that's where our research becomes even more valuable. Let me take you through in this helicopter tour of our basic services, the different ways we can help impact your ratings and make a difference in your Nielsen numbers. The first is social media, and the big premise here is data. The fact is social media platforms know an awful lot about their logged in users. The key word being logged in. These are in fact walled gardens, and with logins comes the ability to associate all sorts of data with a name and household address, your age, where exactly you live, what type of music you're interested in, what sorts of other content categories you consume. You as a radio station, generally speaking, if you're doing it right, are collecting basic listener data online. You've got names, addresses, email addresses, maybe mobile phone numbers. Well, it turns out that your information, we match it up against social media login for information, has a lot in common. In fact, we can limit our marketing to those people that you have a relationship with that can be found on social media. Generally speaking, if there's an email address involved, it's 70 or 80% of your station database can be located. Now, not everybody is going to be in your target demo and residing in one of the zip codes that you've identified as a good zip code to market in. In fact, it's probably going to be about between 1 and 10 and 2 and 10 within your database. But that small universe of folks you have a relationship with in zip codes that matter to you, well, we can model them thanks to data modeling capabilities that the social media platforms give us called lookalike audience. So suddenly we can identify, and it's generally speaking up to half of the audience within your collection of hot zip codes who have enough in common data attributes to be listed in the top 1% correlations with the people that you already have a relationship with. The best news is, while they certainly can be on the platform where we're buying advertising, they don't have to be. We can market to custom audiences and lookalike audiences off of Facebook, off of TikTok, off of Instagram, on other websites and mobile apps. But here's the key. We're using their targeting information and limiting the ad exposure only to those folks who are either part of your data relationship or who should be part of your data relationship. Think of this as being able to stalk people across the social media ecosystem as if you had stolen your competitor's database. That's how pinpoint accurate this is. And whether they're on CNN or TMZ or Facebook or TikTok, we can find them and we can serve your video or display ad to them. But all of that pales in comparison to what NuVoodoo knows about the ratings prospects, because we collect data. And so we know, for example, what percentage of RPS yeses and RPS heavies are consuming different platforms. This probably doesn't surprise you at all, but different platforms have different demographic strength and attract different format life groups. And how you'd market to a country audience is probably very different than how you would market to a rhythmic top 40 or urban contemporary station. And we can find that out, which is why no two NuVoodoo campaigns are ever alike. We optimize them based on channels, and obviously social media is but one channel. It's a foundational part of what we do, but certainly not the only thing. One of the biggest and most exciting kind of new platforms where we find a lot of success in, and if you paid attention to the pay attention to data I gave you earlier, you'll notice something called CTV OTT came up. Well, that is connected TV, or what we call over-the-top platforms, basically buzzword bingo for linear shows that are presented to people who don't have access to it on cable or through broadcast television. So they're watching TV like any one of the rest of us, but they're doing it on their iPad, on their smart TV connected to the internet in the living room or the bedroom, or even on their mobile phone while they're out and about trying to kill time on a commute. And those programs wrap people's attention, meaning they're in rapt attention. And when you have somebody paying a lot of attention to the content and who are strung along by the plot, when we interrupt infrequently, your commercial message tends to get seen nearly in its entirety most of these commercials are non-skippable, and among the inventory that is skippable, people are hanging on for that next segment of the reality TV show they missed on network TV last night, but are rewatching it on Hulu. Or my favorite cop show is Bosch on Freevee, which is Amazon's commercial OTT sister video network. And so, yeah, I tend to sit through those non-skippable spots on those channels. So Cord Cutter is kind of a new and emerging or emerged online audience. And we can pair that nicely with the old-fashioned online websites, video, pre-roll, mobile apps, and games. Those places that folks have been congregating for the better part of 2 decades. When you think about video, think of pre-roll that runs in before, like a Jake Tapper video or a TMZ video that chronicles the latest celebrity misdeed. That's called pre-roll advertising, and we're able to use your assets the same way we'd place them, in a show. We can place them in these one-off pre-rolls or put display advertising on websites, mobile apps, and games. Now, what comes with that distribution, which is nearly ubiquitous, comes incredibly robust targeting. So we know through our own data that OTT, connected TV, and certain websites and mobile apps are a really good place to reach audience constituencies, especially the ones who listen to a lot of radio. But there's other targeting that we can license and buy access to, which gives us the ability to target based on actual media consumption, including radio listening. What you're looking at here is almost a selector-like rules prioritization scheme. For those of you familiar with music scheduling system, knows that we can get our music scheduler to obey rules in sort of a descending order of priority. Well, that's what we can do with targeting to these platforms on OTT, connected TV, regular online video, regular mobile app display advertising, and so forth, by prioritizing the type of media consumer that we're reaching. So for this classic rock, classic hits radio station, for example, our first priority is to find the heaviest users of the formats that I'm most likely to steal listeners from or to reinforce my brand with. And that would be, this collection of library-oriented format. P1s, meaning the ones that are in the upper quintile of time spent listening. They're our priority one. We can't find a format heavy. Let's do the next best thing. And let's go after people who already match my demo and hot zip codes, but also who give lots of time spent listening to radio, especially in the day parts that really pay the bills well, which would be weekday prime, Monday through Friday, 6A to 7P. And we can go down the list in descending order of priority, knowing that each impression served went through this hierarchical acid test so that we're influencing the most qualified people the most often to change their behavior, lured by a contest or some other incentive to switch to your radio station for a short period of time. Now, we're not going to reach everybody that way. And certainly if you've been reading about data privacy, or you've been exposed to apps asking your permission to track your location or to track your activity across other apps, that's how these marketers can infer different lifestyle trends or preferences or to follow you more conveniently. There's now enough Americans who are resistant to that type of tracking to make this next version of targeting almost equally popular, and that's called contextual advertising. So if we can't find people and their devices who qualify based on certain attributes that we're looking for, well, what we can do is then let's target the content, realizing we can always limit advertising based on what zip codes you're in and what demographic groups you belong to. Most people can't escape that level of classification. But if we can't find them as tagged as a fan of, I'm just making this up, Justin Timberlake, then let's go find content that features Justin Timberlake prominently. Maybe it's a blogger who is reporting on his tour, and there's lots of keywords and other identifiable characteristics in the video, in the audio, and in the graphics that our ad tech can identify and recognize that as a good, likely, contextually relevant placement for your advertising. We use AI to make these determinations. It's not a human being subjectivity. We're using audio, keyword, and phrase identification in, for example, podcasts and on programmatic, on demand side digital streaming platforms like Spotify and Pandora. Or we're looking for graphic pattern matches, text recognition, and even we're able to even scan videos so that your pre-roll runs before your advertising plays in front of it. We make sure it's contextually relevant. Now, the next tactic is outdoor. Now, there's nothing new or fancy about outdoor, but what makes it interesting today is that we don't have to be committed to locations 24/7 and pay thousands of dollars only moving one time a month. We can move multiple times a day. We could set up a display campaign that runs on billboards and on transit shelters and maybe even on urban street panels where there's not a lot of commuter traffic, but there's plenty of foot traffic, and then change that up. So it might be inbound in morning drive and more of an outbound pattern in afternoon drive. We're able to do that. And we're also maybe put your morning show on the morning creative, and when it runs in the afternoon, we switch up the way we could switch up display ads, just different outdoor creative that runs in our digital billboards in the afternoon. And on top of that, if we're going to be strategic and more brand reinforcing in our outdoor messaging, we can be more tactical with the people who pass within close proximity of those outdoors because we can geofence them. That means to put a circumference around each outdoor display asset for only during the time that your outdoor message is running. And we're able to capture mobile devices by identifying a mobile device ID or even browser cookie in kind of a matching technique. Now, here's the beauty is we can retarget those phones with more specific, maybe tactical messages, and it doesn't have to be everyone. We could limit those people who meet certain age characteristics, gender characteristics, and perhaps even through monitoring linger time of their devices, we can make sure that they're in the zip codes that matter to your ratings enough to qualify them for what's called the retargeting pool. And so we're then serving messages. I'll give you a good example. Let's suppose we're introducing a new hot AC radio station with some exciting marquee talent we've stolen from across the street. And they're on in morning and afternoon drive, and we want to make their presence known on billboards to the general marketplace. At the same time, people passing within close proximity who match up well to the targeting that we're going after for the radio station, we can serve the weekday payday or the 10,000 jams in a row that we're playing during this introductory period. All of that is possible, marrying technology with strategic messaging and tactical reinforcement messaging to just a qualified subset of the overall audience we're exposing the primary message to. So finally, personalized direct mail, there's nothing to explain about that. I think we all get it. But because of our ability to distill audiences down to very narrow subsegments, we're able to shrink the size of direct mail campaigns without reducing the probabilities for success. So in a market like New York City, it used to take 250,000 pieces. And we used to send these on behalf of WCBS FM way back in the day. Fast forward to today in New York City for a big radio station like that, who we don't work with right now, so I'm not giving anything away, it might take 30, 35, 40,000 pieces at the most. So we've shrunk the marketplace by nearly 85%. In a market like Atlanta, instead of 150,000 pieces, it's 25,000 pieces. A place like Jacksonville that might have taken 60 or 70,000 pieces is now 10,000 max. So while we're not changing direct mail, we are reducing the size of the campaign without losing any of the efficacies. Our probability for impacting meters or diaries does not change. Only the cost does, and that even factors in the cost of postage and printing, which are both on the rise in these inflationary times. So that's a quick little world tour about how we marry data, our own proprietary research, with tactics that allow us to play on a micro level with your own information, your own database, your own ratings information that helps us distill the marketplace down to the smallest group possible that, against which we can affect change and make a big difference in your ratings. So give us a ring or email us. Tell me more at NuVoodoo.com if we can help you on your next marketing campaign.